What is something about yourself that sounds totally made up, but is 100% real? I died first, and then was born. I've told this story a few times on Reddit, but I enjoy telling it, so here we go again. During the cesarean to bring me into the world, there was some major complication on my mother's end. She started bleeding internally, drowning me in the womb. When I was removed, the doctors tried to get me breathing but couldn't. I was declared dead. My mother was still unconscious, but my dad was brought in to say goodbye to me. He held me in his arms, was saying goodbye when out of nowhere I started coughing up blood and screaming as babies do. Apparently it was the weirdest moment in his life, being abjectly terrified and overwhelmed with joy that I was alive. It's my favorite story to tell because weirdly it takes some pressures off on birthdays. I don't do well with too much attention by family/friends, but celebrating my death day doesn't bring people the same connotations. I was once sponsored by the Crunk Energy drink company for sailing. I imagine I was the only sailor on their list. I literally just emailed them saying that I sailed and asked if they wanted me to put stickers on my boat. They sent me a few cases of the drink, t-shirts, hats, the works. My car was known as the Crunk Mobile. That's badass. My great-great-grandfather was a Pinkerton detective, acted on vaudeville, and had 5 wives in 2 different states that knew nothing of each other. He also slightly changed his last name each time and never got caught until Ancestry website happened lol. Sounds a bit like my great-grandfather. He had a wife in France and then 2 in the US in neighboring counties. He was caught though. My great-grandmother was wife #2. She found out about wife #3 and divorced him. No one knew about the first wife in France until I pulled his service records from World War I. My great-grandma ran a brothel back at the turn of the 20th century. She was Algonquin and people were pretty racist back then, so she had a hard time getting business. Since it was a coastal town, Maine, she bought up a couple leaky old row boats and would load them up with hookers and booze and row them out to the ships at night. When ships came in to port, most of the crew would get shore leave and hit the bars and brothels in town, but they always had to leave a few sailors on the ship to keep an eye on it. My great-grandmother figured those guys had money too and probably felt left out. She basically set up water-based lot lizards, or Uber hoes. My grandpa and his sisters grew up in the brothel and no one would talk to them or socialize with them. My grandpa met my grandma picking green beans for a local farmer. They fell in love. When they wanted to get married they had to leave the state to get away from her family that were utterly disgusted that she would marry the son of a whore. So they ran off to Detroit because GM was hiring, and that's how my family came to Michigan. I sneeze when I think of tax. Every single time. My wife likes to give me shit if I just sneeze innocently. She thinks she's a riot. Edit. Judging by all the Me Too comments, this isn't as unheard of as I thought. If you sneeze because of tax, don't worry, you're still a freak, but you're not alone. Now your wife gets turned in by people sneezing. Reverse card. One of my ancestors was dumb and bought one of Napoleon's door knobs. It turns out it's fake. Door knobs were invented after Napoleon died. I'm intrigued by the fact that this is the story that your family decided to pass on from one generation to the next far enough to lose track of the relation and just refer to the subject as ancestor. Man, I would really hate it if my great-grandchildren had a story like this about me. I completed GTA San Andreas in 3 days. I never slept, eat nor shoot. Are these 2 separate facts? I survived a plane crash in the desert, trapped there for 2 days, and was rescued by 2 dudes who were trying to bet if they can cook an egg in the sand. So can cook an egg in the sand? The albumin whites of chicken eggs coagulate between 144 degrees and 149 degree F. The yolks coagulate between 149 degrees and 158 degree F. The sand in a desert is often 30 degrees to 40 degree F above the air temperature. Death Valley's high temp is 139 degree F and often sees 120 degrees in the summer. So sand temperature should be enough to cook an egg. Nice science, Chuck. I cannot taste any salt whatsoever. Edit. For people asking, it's a brain thing. Food tastes bland, salted chips taste plain, and I've not had any British food. Edit 2. I can still taste other spices and herbs. No idk what cum tastes like. Sorry to put you on blast dude, but that's weird. Salt water just tastes bad. MSG and other sodium based things just make me gag. Getting on Xbox, Overwatch, etc. doesn't help, but I can smell the salt. What do you taste if you put a bit of salt in your mouth? Nothing, you'll feel it there, but that a bit. That's pretty wild. I got ran over by a car, but the driver didn't see me and proceeded to back over me. Edit. Thanks for all the kind words. I'm shocked at the amount of people who said that this happened to them or someone they know/knew as well. The world really is a weird place. And for all who are asking, my legs are perfectly fine now. On a side note, I actually really enjoy running. It's one of my favorite things to do. No, I'm not from China, nor have I ever lived there. I'm American. I don't quite understand why people are asking this. Edit #2. A couple redditors have pointed out to me that it's because killing someone in China is apparently less expensive, which is a horrifying thought, but thanks for the explanations. Edit #3. How is my mental health? Was I traumatized? Well, it very fucking terrifying at the time, and I was definitely scared of cars afterwards. But if you're asking if I'm feeling any trauma to this day, then I would say not very much if at all. Thanks for asking though. Did you get any major injuries? Luckily they didn't get my torso, but they crushed my legs. This was about when I was 13 to 14, about 4 to 5 years ago, so my legs healed, and I'm walking again. I'm blind. Many online commenters think that I'm lying. If I wanna lie, I would rather tell everyone that I'm a rich traveler. My grandfather got a reward from Mussolini in 1935. He was just born with 6.3 kilograms, 13 pounds 14.2 ounces, and was awarded the award of Italy's biggest baby. Edit. Wow, I didn't expected it to blow this way. Thanks for the silver. Also, since some people asked, my great-grandma also worked as a cleaning lady one day before he was born. He was born December 24th, and she worked until December 23rd of that year. And if you think my grandpa was big, recently a baby was born in India with 6.7 kilograms, 14.77 pounds, and the world record was for another Italian baby, born in 1955 with flippin' 10.2 kilograms, 22 lb 8 ounces. My grandfather's birthday was on the 20th of April like Hitler. He really liked that as a child in Nazi Germany, since he had the day off on his birthday and could celebrate instead of going to school, since the Führer birthday was a national holiday. I once successfully ran an unfunded shelter for 100 homeless veterans as a homeless civilian. How did this come to be, if I may ask? I lost my job and housing in early 2017. I'd been homeless before and slept rough on the streets, although that was in California, where the weather was at least bearable. This time I was living in North Dakota, and I'd seen what the winters were like. I figured if I was going to have to sleep on the streets again, I'd better move somewhere where I didn't have to contend with hypothermia for a good part of the year, so used the last of my money to relocate to Arizona. I had a totally impractical plan of finding work and then housing within a few weeks before my remaining funds ran out, but the deadline came and went, and I found myself on the streets again. A homeless advocate I'd reached out to tried to get me sheltered at a place for homeless veterans, but being a civilian, they turned me away. Aforementioned advocate reached an accommodation with the veterans by setting up an overpass shelter for homeless civilians next door that I would run for him. In exchange, I would be allowed to sleep on their property, outside the walls, use their facilities like showers and bathrooms, and join in their communal meals, if they had enough food. Because the civilian shelter was an overpass thing, I really didn't have much to do, or anywhere to go, in the day, so I spent more and more time with the vets. I took it on myself to help them with odd jobs like security, packing lunches for the local homeless, who didn't/couldn't live with them, to come and get, unloading donations from concerned citizens, and security, fire watch while the camp slept at night. I soon became the camp's official cook, which was awesome, because I love cooking, and it was a challenge cooking meals for so many people so quickly, using an outdoor kitchen with bare bones facilities. I gradually began to take on more responsibilities with the vets, and the overpass shelter was more like a side gig. The vets repeatedly asked me to move into the walls and stay with them, making me full time, but I refused at first because I felt like it would be letting down the guy who I was running the overpass shelter for. I woke up one day to see the vets dismantling the tent we used for the overpass shelter, and one of them wryly asked me, "Where are you going to stay now?" I moved in with the guys later that day. A couple of months later, the incumbent base commander and his family had secured housing for themselves, and he didn't ask as much as tell me I would be taking over for them. They had thought about who was going to take on the job after they left, and decided I was apparently the only one fit for the role, due to my diligence and enthusiasm for helping my newfound friends. NGL. There were parts of it that were tough and really grated. I felt like I had to constantly prove myself to the big dick swinging mentality veterans, who felt that, as a veterans camp, it should have been run by a vet. I was also just as homeless as my men. We had nothing but tent fabric to protect us from the element, sometimes little food or water, and constant issues with the local tweakers and criminal element of the homeless. But helping these people get off the streets and or reunited with their families is hands down one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in life. When my mom was in grad school, she took several labs where she worked with cadavers. Because my dad worked nights, she often had to take me to class with her, and she'd usually just plonk me down on the table with the cadaver while she worked on it. "Can I go to work with you?" Over my dead body. Slams body bag onto breakfast table. Laugh track. "So working from home today, mom?" Stares. More laugh track. I can smell some illnesses and chronic symptoms. My sense of smell is normally pretty average, but I can sometimes smell if a person is sick before they start showing symptoms, and have been able to identify/predict 2 seizures, a diabetic blood sugar drop, and multiple chronic migraines before they happened. Are you a service dog? No, but if I could actually work as a service dog, that would be freaking awesome. Someone else mentioned the super taster thing. There are jobs in the food industry, probably others too, where super senses like that are in high demand. You ever look into it? I've heard of that kind of thing before, like a guy who could smell cyanide being employed by a police force to identify cyanide poisonings, but I've never really looked into it. I'm still in college at the moment, so I really don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. Something using this tray could be a good backup plan if I end up not being able to decide or want something new. Subscribe and leave a like, please.